questions. Shane, over to you, please.
Yep, thank you, Valerie. So as you mentioned, I am Shane. I'll be the moderator for this session. And joining me is Albert Ho, the founder of Ransack, Ki Kwa, the co-founder of TicTag, Leon Chu, the CEO of Get All Myanmar, and Yasmin Tan, the executive director for Conjunct Consulting. So we have a bunch of questions, not only specifically at them, but general questions that could help aid you guys in building and scaling an idea. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the questions. So the first question I have for our panelists would be that, what are the 3 sectors to invest in or growth areas you see in ASEAN within the next 10 years? Leon, would you mind giving your input on this one?
Hey, sorry, I can't really hear you guys. Can you repeat the question? Or one more time, please, sorry.
No worries. So my question is, what are the top 3 sectors to invest in or growth areas within ASEAN in the next 10 years?
It's tricky, right? I think investment areas, you really have to look at things that really generate profitability in the very short run. There are 2 places, right? You either pick up firms or industries that are cash flow positive, or you pick up firms that are tech heavy for future valuations. To me, I always prefer things that are in the lending industry, in the credit assessment, insurtech. These will be the things I'll be looking at. From a country perspective, sorry lah, I'm from Myanmar, right? And Myanmar is very bad now, so I wouldn't pick Myanmar as a country. I'll probably be bullish Vietnam, Laos. Yeah, these 2, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, that's really great insights. Albert, would you have any differing points of view that you want to add to the topic?
Sure. For me, I personally feel tourism is actually one of the sectors that it's going to be a huge change. We're going to see a whole paradigm shift in the next 10 years, simply because of the fact that this COVID has been restricting travel for the past couple of years. All of us have been stuck home in our own country. So it's essentially a giant reset button on the whole tourism industry, where those that it's not sustainable, they're forced to leave the industry, and then those who can hold on would be holding on all the way until now. So eventually, when COVID starts to ease back to normalcy again, tourism sector will be one of the industry which I feel will have a lot of potential for people to re-enter again, and to basically reinvent how the general public will perceive tourism. Yeah, that's my take.
Couldn't agree more, especially once the travel restrictions get released. I'm pretty sure a lot of us be flocking to travel again. So my next question is with regards to acquiring funding, but we've had a lot of conversation on how to acquire funding, but not so much on how you should use the funding. So upon acquiring this funding, what would be the key areas you would apportion these fundings to? And what would be some ways you would ensure that each cent is used optimally? Albert, I'm really sorry for going to you, but could you weigh in on this one?
Sure, definitely. So on the question of funding, I may not be the right person to answer this because my company hasn't got any funding at the moment. But the reason for this is we intentionally chose not to. My take on funding generally is it differs from company to company. So for certain companies, for me, my own sense is for any startup, generally you actually don't need any huge amount of capital to begin any sort of startup. It's more of the attitude and to execute what you want to achieve. If it's something that it's constricted by money, then maybe you're not exactly doing the right thing. So for us in Ransack here, we make the conscious decision not to take any investors in the early stage, and we want to take it as far as possible until we reach a point where, hey, we maybe need a specific strategic partner, and that's where I will bring in funding. So so in a sense where it really kind of depends on which stage of the company you are. There are smart money and there like smart capital, and there are just like general capital that people they just take in whatever money they have. So yeah, it really it depends on which company you are asking. Yeah.
Okay, that's really great. Keith, would you like to weigh in on this one?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely agree with Albert. What he says about like if your company doesn't need funding right from the start, that's a really good sign, right? Because your company is profitable from day one. But I think it to answer the question, it really depends on the stage that your startup's at, as Albert said also, as well as your business model. So some tech startups invest a lot of money into building up a minimum viable product because they don't make money at the start. And so product development takes up the majority of the funding. And startups are like perpetually, right? Like up to Series A, B, C, they're always in a growth stage. So, but this growth could be focused on, say, product development or commercialization. In TicTac's case, it was both at once. So we split the funding accordingly to hire the best talent for each function. We also definitely try to be as cost efficient as possible to like make sure every cent is used optimally by tapping into grants and subsidies. Like, we are like in Global Ready Talent in Singapore, as well as SG United Traineeship. We tap on that to get like some of the subsidies for our talent. And of course, like getting grant income from winning the occasional startup competition always helps with the cash flow.
Right. Okay. That's really great insights. I have a specific question for you. As you all know, being a student entrepreneur has become sort of the norm of a lot of students coming up with their own products and startups. But I guess one of the common challenges that I've been hearing constantly is for student founders acquiring funding because of the perceived lack of experience and credibility of being a student founder. So given that when you started co-founded TicTac during your years in SMU, what were the two biggest challenges you faced in that situation? And if given the opportunity to go back and redo something, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I really like that there's like a lot of student entrepreneurs out there now. Like I was with the new batch of student entrepreneurs. I'm not even like an old founder and like an old student entrepreneur or anything, but it's really nice to see that coming up. I think being a student, you naturally have less experience than anybody else in the field. And then I guess I'm lucky that in my case, academic knowledge does help you out a bit. And the rest comes with making up for it with effort. So it's all the way down to like from, let's say, sending out a cool email, writing a good email, and like being consistent with your reply times. And yeah, never being late for a meeting, that kind of thing. It always adds to your credibility as a founder. So being a student, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a pro. It could even be a con at times. But the credibility thing is like there's way more than one thing that adds to your credibility, and there's other ways to make up for it also. And also, I've been blessed with co-founders that aren't actually students. So TicTac wasn't solely started by like a bunch of students. It's me and 3 other co-founders that are more experienced, definitely, and older than me by like 7 years. We are all new founders together, but I do benefit from their advice, which comes by way of many years of experience that they have in the AI industry in Singapore. So I'd say the biggest challenge for me is definitely juggling my studies and TicTac at the same time. That's the first biggest challenge. And if I were to go back and do it differently, like let's say, just take my previous SEM, for example, I think I was taking on too much at the time, and I forgot that my co-founders are always there to help. So asking your co-founders to help, asking for help is nothing wrong with it. And I guess managing my time also, like there's only like so few hours in a day, and it's very easy to let those hours slip by. So me personally, time management in my previous SEM, like the previous 3 months, would definitely have, I would definitely have done that. And second question, second biggest challenge is when TicTac expanded to South Korea and I went there to set up a subsidiary. That was pretty daunting at first because before then I had no experience in hiring, or I had overcome the language barrier. I had to do my market research, understand the government initiatives, and many of these websites are all in Korean. So language barrier again. And at the same time, I was committing to school as well. So it was like I was in Korea and I was taking an online semester in SMU. So it was both school and me going to Korea. If I were to do it differently, I would definitely have like committed to one instead of doing both at once, because it wasn't a good experience. But if you're saying like if I had the knowledge that I had now and I went back to Korea, I would definitely have spent less time in the office, like because I already know how it's kind of done. Like the main problem was that you went there and kind of like, okay, go find a client. We'll be watching you and we'll assess you in a couple of weeks, because I was there as part of like a competition. But as in, it wasn't that bad, but that was like along the lines of it. And with the knowledge I had now, I would have way more fun in Korea.
Right. Okay, that's great to hear. Definitely a lot of things, and I really do get like juggling a business while being a student is like a very big challenge for some if you don't have the proper time management. So following for that, Singapore is unique in a way where it gives a lot of opportunities and help for businesses to actually grow themselves with the various subsidies and help programs they offer. But what are some other factors and areas that, as a founder or as someone who's running a business, what would you like to see implemented within ASEAN that can help facilitate this growth within itself and not just in Singapore? Leon, would you mind answering this?
Yeah, you're actually asking the worst person, right? You're asking the person who actually scaled to Myanmar, had to run into COVID, and run into a coup, and run into a civil disobedience movement, right? So I'm like triple whammy, right? But I think no matter what, I think it's always, the key about Singapore is that it's a very good place to establish a brand name, right? You cooperate a company, get talent, be based here, be brand as Singapore, and then earn overseas money, right? I think if you want to compete in the Singapore space, it will be very difficult. It's too saturated. And I think you don't really need to reinvent the wheel when you are operating in the overseas market. You just have to do what is tried and tested. I do want to add, like Albert talked about smart money, right? And the converse, I think, would be stupid money. And I think stupid money exists, right? And what you should do if you are a new startup is to structure stupid money as a debt, right? You should have a co-founder raise a lot of convertible loans or start a working capital loan or credit lines. You know, you don't use, you don't pay. When you want to use, you pay, right? And that credit facilities comes in very useful for you, right? You're not really selling out equity. Okay, so I digress again, but back to my question. You want to expand out into ASEAN simply because the money is there to be earned, and the problems you're solving overseas are very profitable, and it's just a very natural thing to do. You know, I don't see how opening a pet hotel in Singapore is going to make you any money, right? But if you solve a water problem in Cambodia, if you solve an electricity problem in Laos, I think a lot of money can be made. If you do solar panels in Vietnam, right, you can earn big bucks. Yeah.
Right. So
go to where the money is, lah. Just go to where the money is, right? Yeah.
It's the common thing to finding the pain points of what's going on. And yeah, so bringing this off on the topic of ASEAN being so diverse, Yasmin, I have a specific question for you. So given that ASEAN comprises of these 10 different countries, and obviously they are similar in certain ways, they have differing cultures and government structures. So what would be the 3 biggest challenges for running a social enterprise and nonprofits around the regions? And what are some forms of support that could be given to aid these enterprises and nonprofits?
Yeah, good question. First, the challenges, right? We know that ASEAN is a very diverse group of countries, right? They are not monolithic market, right? As you know, Keith has highlighted, you know, in Korea, you know, and all different countries, just the language alone, the culture alone, spending power alone, investment opportunities, right? Technology maturity is very different. So understanding that market individually, I think is one of the keys, right? Before you, well, it's interesting to chase the money, right? You go to the gap, right? And then, yes, you assess the different viabilities, right? Down to the actions, right? Company incorporation, right? Who you hire first, right? When you're opening a subsidiary company, right? Your first office, what is your new marketing message that you want to broadcast that will be acceptable in the new market, right? New partnerships, are there people you can trust there, right? To generate your new pipeline, you know, of sales. A lot of considerations, challenges will always be there, right? Whether you are in a local market that you are familiar with or with a new market, it's just how you assess that risk, how you mitigate it, right? You can start simply risk register, right? To highlight the potential risks, right? And then weigh the pros and cons. It's important, you know, sometimes we take it for granted in Singapore, right? We have such easy access to timely and, you know, mostly accurate information. But a lot of times when we are in a foreign culture, right? Just knowing just going to the website, you can't find a lot of things. You can't find a lot of information on regulations and banking information may not be upfront, right? So having an agency or, contracting an agency to help you, right, overcome some of these hurdles may save you some time, right? And always be patient, buffer for additional time, right? Your time loss is money and you get frustrated. Right? So even things like banking documents that require notarization last minute, right? Oh, you'll be like, I'm already here. I flew all the way here. I'm ready. Oh, actually we missed out this step. So being familiar with all that, on top of the culture of work and language, right? We are very familiar in speaking a certain way and using certain words, how is that translated in the culture? Are they offensive? Are they misconstrued? Spend time understanding their culture and showing respect will always, go a long way.
Right. I think that is really relevant, especially within ASEAN. Actually, a follow up on this, right, with understanding the market properly. So aside from networking yourself with the locals, understanding their cultures and how you might perceive things might come off, what are some other areas that you think would be overlooked sometimes? For you, Yasmin.
Overlooked. I think there's that, I think recently there's been a lot more scams happening, right? All over the world. Yeah. So there have been a lot of opportunities, and it may be very tempting. There's actually a lot of organizations out there that are built to scam people in a really, really professional way, that even traditional legal firms, or agencies may not even catch that, right? So this is a very real risk that's happening, especially since COVID. So that could be something that, some firms may have overlooked, which is why we talk about the importance of connections, knowing people there, and all that, right? It's so helpful, right? Even if you have a friend who you're familiar with, who you trust, even understanding that perspective could be very helpful.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for the input. So yeah, on the topic of expanding, aside from your typical market analysis, country bylaws, and or things like tax preparation, what will be on your to-do list when entering a new country or expanding into a new country? Leon, I think you might be the best fit to answer this question. Would you mind weighing in?
So basically, we didn't do any homework. We just went there and we just started. We took a bunch of money. We went there and just tried different loan products and see who defaulted, how we got cheated, who was screwing us over, which business partners were reliable. Yeah, I think from a risk mitigation aspect, you kind of just have to embrace the fact that you are undertaking a certain amount of risk because you are vying for a certain amount of return. And in an overseas market, the risk-adjusted return is there, right? That's why there's a risk premium, right? That's why you can charge a certain amount of rate. That's why there's a volume business. You can earn the money there, right? And it comes with the risk. I would think it's hard to mitigate the risk. I think as you expand your firm overseas, you just have to keep embracing the many, many ways people will screw you over, and you learn how to plug the gaps. Very simple, right? And when COVID happens, you learn how to plug that gap. And when the banks collapse, you learn how to plug the gap. And when the government is overthrown, you learn how to plug the gap.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's how it is, lor. Yeah.
Right.
If I could weigh in on this, I think from a purely startup perspective, like if you're a new startup trying to go to, like you already take the next step and go to another country, then definitely a strong accelerator would help you get at least like one foot in the door. Like competitions like K Startup Grand Challenge or like Vietnam Startup Wheel, they double as accelerator programs that help you get your business into a new market. So you also get like a lot of networking opportunities to meet other startups as well. And another kind of like tip is how to get you try to get first-hand accounts of what it's actually like to do business in a foreign country and abide by their cultural norms. So a lot like what Yasmin said, but in this case, there's like little tiny business cultural differences. So let's say an MOU, a memorandum of understanding. It's like a non-binding contract between non-binding agreement between two parties, right? Like maybe it could be between your startup and like a potential client of yours. So there's a difference in ASEAN countries and non-ASEAN countries. What an MOU means is usually taken more seriously in ASEAN countries, meaning that you can probably follow up with like an actual contract of business rather than non-ASEAN countries like let's say Europe or America. Like it's virtually completely unused, and like some people or some startup owners in Europe and America have never even heard of any MOUs before. They just run straight into the contract signing. And in Korea especially, like MOUs are well known, but they're not super serious. Like I say, what I like about ASEAN and ASEAN countries is that once you sign an MOU, you can expect more things to come out of this this agreement. Yeah, so tiny little things like this in the business culture.
Right, I think that's really important to notice the little tiny things. Actually, on the topic of unexpected challenges, Leon, if you don't mind me going back to you. So yeah, I do believe there's expected challenges and unexpected challenges. And as much as a business can prepare for the unexpected, there's always some challenges that really might just turn your business a complete 180. So given the challenges that Myanmar has faced in the past few years, what's your take on how you navigate your business through it? And for new startup founders, what would be your advice to manage their expectations and cope with these so-called unexpected challenges?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and it's very hard to answer, right? So personally, like my business it's really fintech, and now I'm operating in a country where there's no fin or tech, right? The banks have closed, and the telcos are not working. How can my fintech operate, right? But in a country in turmoil like Myanmar, there are still a lot of, it's back to the old ages, right? Where maybe a remittance play can be very strong, right? Where you take over financial responsibilities that the banks no longer want to do. Move monies around, allow people to cash in, cash out, allow Singaporeans to remit back overseas. If you have Burmese helpers, I bet they haven't sent money back to Myanmar for the last 1.5 years. So I think there's a big market in that. And I think it's very possible for the firm to re-pivot into that. It's tricky. Sometimes you find that, like specific to my situation, my main management team were all Singaporean, right? And we also have to accept the fact that, hey, there's probably no way in hell that we can fly back to Myanmar, right? Because and the whole overhang of what is happening, there's still COVID. And I don't know is variant what now like in Myanmar, right? There's no detection process at all, right? So
Right.
With the unexpected challenges, you'll find that you'll make the most horrendous, heartbreaking decisions that you never want to make, right? You cut your best talent, not because they are not good, or they don't want to work, or it's the fact that they cannot fly back to Myanmar forever, you know? It's just not operationally possible. So my only piece of advice to founders out here is that it's going to be a very heartbreaking journey. So the least you could do is run very fast. I find like the slow run, burn kind of thing, you die on the 3rd, 4th year, you know? Yeah. I just recommend, just very quickly, right? I just want to recommend a book, right? It's called Built to Sell. You know, founders like us, right? You don't start a business thinking you want to sell it, but you do want to start a business crafting it such that it's sellable. You may never want to sell it, but you are crafting a business such that it's sellable, right? How is your sales funnel? How is your back-end operations? Is everything delegated out? Are you still the key man risk, you know? How do you make the firm independent? Do you have a diversity? Do you have a concentration problem? Do you only focus on one customer, or you get revenue from one customer? Maybe my mistake is that I only focus on Myanmar revenues, right? Right. And this one country revenue has now killed me, given the fact that the country is in turmoil. So I think it's always important to take a step back as a founder, disassociate yourself from your baby, and figure out, if I were to sell the baby, what would people want in my baby? Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. And could you expand a little bit more on what you meant by run very fast? Just for clarity, because I'm picturing you're a
Yeah, I
business
think
just,
like people maybe they talk about how entrepreneurship is like a endurance game, right?
Mhm.
Right? Look at Hungry Go Where. Hungry Go Where started at 2006, right? Is it an endurance game? No, right? They're gone in 2021, right? With a Singtel as the biggest backer. So I mean, you look at Caro, right? And it's sad because the headlines don't talk about how the funds are raised to help the firm deliver a value proposition, but it's just about the funds equaling a unicorn status. You know what I mean? But I guess that's
Yeah,
the
I
new way
see.
to do it things, right? It's about
Mhm.
the fact that you do unparalleled growth in the last, in the first 3 to 4 years, and you figure out, it's just, not, there's so many things that can kill you if you look at it from a long horizon. That's my take.
Right. I think that also ties in back to what you mentioned earlier about it being an endurance game. Sometimes holding on for your baby too long actually works against you. Would any of the other panelists have a differing point of view? Albert or Keith, would you guys like to chime in? Yasmin as well? Okay. So if not, let's bring it a little bit closer to home. With the recent change in Singapore, and I think with most of the world right now, gravitating towards work from home statuses. So obviously, given that gravitational shift, and companies giving their employees the option to work from home, how would you as a founder establish that company culture for businesses, given this remote work being the default right now? Yasmin, would you mind giving your input on this?
Sure, Shane. Yeah, I mean, our nature of work is in consulting projects, workshops, facilitated workshops and events, right? So that has always allowed us to work remotely, actually. So even before COVID, right, I was very lucky to be able to work from home. I'll catch up with the teams at the office. I get to go out to meet the clients at the nonprofits and social enterprises. I get to see how they run their services and programs. I think this trend, right, of working from home, or even this hybrid model that we hope will sustain, is the challenge is teams may not feel so connected, right? We are after all social beings, right? And being able to chat, about work or personal catch-ups can really increase our morale, right? And foster a sense of belonging to the organization, to one another. So now that we're mostly working from home, we really need, as leaders, to create the time and space for such connections, right? So it could be simply, starting a conversation instead of being so task-oriented as we are sometimes, just having a conversation, oh, this happened to me this weekend, what y'all do, and as the leader to show that you are comfortable with that and you want them to share, about themselves, so that they really feel that they are part of this family, of the important work that you are doing. There can be certain challenges, right, with remote work. We don't get to see each other. There could be miscommunication, misunderstanding, right, can arise so easily. So what we can do is really provide clear direction, right, and recognize that everybody on our team is different, right? Some people really, they can be left alone, to run and fly, right? Some may need a little bit more direction before they can do that, right? So if you really want people to do what is needed, right, provide that clear directions and check that they understood what you said. And of course, the usual training, onboarding, right, relevant materials, always is able to ensure consistency, right? Trust is a big topic, right? Often staff would say, oh, my director don't trust me, right? Or why is he always asking me to report this, report that? The miscommunication and the lack of trust, right? So, sometimes we can use technology can be an opportunity, right, for us to collaborate even easily, right? For example, using project or team management tools, right? And getting your team members to do their own KPI and do their own task management and then tick it off themselves, right? Have their own sense of accountability. Yeah, so all that, and encouraging open communications. Just make sure that, you know, we want to be kind to the people who are helping us grow the organizations, right? And we have to be very self-aware and very deliberate in all this, because it really, really matters and makes a difference when the leaders are nurturing, right? And when they are just, you know, demanding.
Right, absolutely. I think it's wonderful and important how content consulting has really prioritized building that bond. And I think as a leader, making that first step to make your employees feel welcome really creates that sense of belonging and really does promote efficiency in the workplace, I feel. But can you expand a little bit more on how clear direction actually helps the bonding between staff?
Yeah, for example, you know, it's about, so my style, right, of working, right, I like to be left alone, you know. Then through this work from home, I realized that not everybody is like that, right? Actually, they require a little bit more clarification and instructions. And they may fear that, oh, you know, I don't know if I will sound stupid if I ask Yasmin, you know? So they may not dare to ask, even though they have the best intentions, they will try to figure out on their own. So I cannot use my own just because I prefer a less directional way, right? Of leadership doesn't mean that everybody will respond the same way. Yeah. So to check in with them, you know, is this clear enough? Right? Is this sufficient enough? Right? What can I do to support you? Because it's ultimately their responsibility to carry out the work. Right? And your role is how do you support them to do this work most effectively?
Okay, thank you so much. I think that really clarifies the question. Albert, would you have any differing methods to really build that business culture within your company?
No, actually, I totally agree with what Yasmin mentioned. So maybe for this question, I'll explain it in a way where there are businesses who've been around for very, very long, and then there are basically young startups. So the main difference is, of course, how long you have been around in your respective industries. So I spoke to friends who have said that, and they told me that, you know, when they have been working in like you know, companies who are generally old or big MNCs, they may struggle with the whole work from home, remote working idea, because once COVID it's back to you know, normal again, or like, you know, with everything gets better, their company will say, hey, the first thing is we want everybody back into the office. You know, we want to see physically people there. So that's how they monitor people and then make sure that work is done. Yeah. So generally people of the older generation, they would have this thinking. But if you belong to the younger generation, you would think that, hey, maybe work is no longer being defined by your working hours. You don't have to work an 8 to 5 job. As long as you deliver what you are supposed to be done end of the day, then that's enough. So in a sense, this whole remote working, right, it gives people or organization the opportunity to really empower your people. Yeah. So, you know, if you want to do any sort of huge change in your HR or just general change in your company's culture, this is actually the perfect time to do it. Yeah. So instead of like constantly checking in people, make sure that, hey, you know, if this guy goes for 1 hour lunch, is he going to be back by, you know, in 1 hour's time? You know, there's no need to do that. Yeah. If you can take this opportunity to simply just entirely empower them. That's what on our end we choose to do. So we don't give like we give deadlines in a longer period. So we say that, hey, we need so and so X, Y, Z to be achieved by let's say in 2 weeks time. But leading up to that 2 weeks, you don't really have to check in week on week. So I like to make a point where respect and basically trust is always there until it is broken. Yeah. So I give full trust to my employee and take this opportunity to empower them instead. Yeah, that's my answer.
Right, I think that's really good. And Leon, since your company is really cross-cultural, would you have any differing adaptations on this model, or would you have found your own way to really build your company culture?
I think it's tricky. I think when I first started the company, when it was 2 people, right? I think the first thing we did was to establish the company culture. We actually, one of my friends is head of culture for Petronas in Malaysia. We flew him into Myanmar, and we just discussed of what we wanted the company culture to be. And now at our peak, we had maybe 400 employees. I do think that there's an overarching company culture, But there's also, I grew to see that there was also team culture, right? The head of finance and how she runs her team can have a very different culture from the sales team. You know, the sales team can maybe they don't come into work, they come into work later, or I don't know what the hell they're doing, right? But the finance team, they have to come a bit earlier, correct? Or they have to be on time. So you tend to have the heads of department also have some leeway in determining that department culture, which can be a bit different, actually can be vastly different from department to department. But you are still have overarching trends of like accountability, this kind of value system that we don't want to break. Like I think like one value culture we have is always to celebrate moments, big or small, right? So whether there's a team lunch on Fridays, or there's somebody's birthday, or somebody got attached, you know, or somebody passed an exam, we will always try to celebrate the moment, right? So that was what we did, lor. Yeah. I think the main genesis here is just treat people like they're human beings, can already. It's very simple. I don't think people do that a lot, right? But if you treat anybody, whether it's Burmese or Cambodian, whether there's cross-cultural tensions or whatever, just treat everybody like a human being, right? Can already. Yeah. Lor.
I actually really respect that mindset, and I think it gets overlooked a lot on how we treat others, especially our employees. And the fact that you adopt that mindset is really, really inspirational. I just gotta put it out there. But yeah, back to the topic on different departments in the company having different cultures. I think we can tie this back into finding co-founders, and I think not everybody would be privileged to have a co-founder that has the same vision as you. So with finding co-founders having differing visions, how would you manage these visions and align it to achieve the common goal of launching and building the company? Keith, would you mind giving an input on this, since you yourself said that you have 3 other co-founders who are older than you, so you must have some differing opinions given that age generation gap?
Yeah, definitely. As in the age gap is one thing. The differing vision is another. I think it's really a conversation that all founders must sit down and have, like, right at the very start of the company, because you can't have like another founder contradicting another, like one, you can't be contradicting one another doing like your daily stand-ups and stuff. Like, this is what I want for the company and stuff. Luckily, we kind of sat down right at the start, decided like this is what it's going to be. Like we came out like a few words to live by, like a vision to like, okay, ours is to enable everyone to benefit from good data and the good that data can bring. It's like, it's really simple for everyone to kind of like catch on, and we haven't really deviated from that. But when it comes to like the day-to-day, I think it's really important to just be the best in your area of expertise. Every co-founder has their own part to play in the company. That's why they have like C-suite titles and stuff. In TikTok, everyone's a co-founder. I mean, not no, as in we have four co-founders, but like every co-founder has their own role to play, and it's best, I found, not to question the expertise of your co-founders. Just trust them to do what they're like the most expert in, unless as long as it like passes like the basic sanity checks. It's best for like the cohesiveness of the whole company if you don't question the department head on what they're doing for their own department. And you should definitely be the devil's advocate, but only if you have to. And definitely like building a company culture, back to that, I do like what Leon said about celebrating the wins. Every time we have like a major win or something, just go out for like drinks and stuff. It's great. Like even with the heightened alert, we could celebrate something else also. Like for example, last Friday we had like an online poker tournament organized by one of my co-founders. I mean, I didn't go, but I heard it was a lot of fun. Yeah, stuff like that.
Right. Actually, you brought up an interesting topic on trusting your co-founders and not contradicting what they say. And I think that's really important, as if co-founders do not have trust, I think that is a really big red flag. But sometimes you might need to essentially give in a different perspective that you may not want to say. So being in your situation, like, did you ever have to come across this kind of situation where you have to go against their judgment and provide a different perspective that may benefit a decision? Keith?
Well, yes, but like it's always best to do it in private. Like never do it in front of like the masses. But as in, there's nothing wrong with like differing opinions. Like there's nothing wrong with like telling him maybe you might be wrong about this, but it should be behind closed doors at least.
Right. That goes a long way, actually, keeping internal matters private. Actually, Albert, would you have anything to weigh on this?
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with what Keith said. It's as founders or even co-founders, you were bound to have different opinions, and then yeah, but generally what you guys can agree on is whatever decision it's been made, right? It's always for the better good of the company. So this one's definitely clear. It's just that we know this is where we want to go to. It's just which path we're going to take to get there, and then that path might differ. So as long as we know that everybody is just doing it for the best of the company, and you need to really respect the specialization that each of the co-founders have. Yeah. So for us internally, we try not to have any like huge veto decisions. Like what Keith mentioned, as long as it passes the sanity check, then it makes sense generally. We would usually let the specialists make the final decision or the final call in whatever business decisions we need to be made. Yeah. So if you want to have like the one who's doing finance making the marketing decision, then everything just chiming in, it becomes very messy. There is no like of course we do appreciate feedback from all the different departments, but of course the department head would have the final decision, and he or she, whatever he says, the rest of us will have to support it. Yeah.
Right. Actually, on the topic of sanity checks, what could be some examples, if you don't mind sharing, on that companies could use to adopt?
I don't have a very good example at the back of my head. So essentially, it's a bit like if you're going to make certain decisions, and this one-off decision may be so important or maybe so drastic that it can actually impact or deviate the path that your company is trying to move to, right? Then that would really call for all of the co-founders or even investors to sit down. But if it's just general day-to-day decisions or even decisions that may impact the company in, let's say, the short to mid-term, I think that's still pretty much okay, because the long-term vision still stays the same. Unless it changes the fundamental of the company, then that is something that we will have to question the whole sanity check issue. Yeah.
Right. So it's not just setting evaluation criteria, KPIs on what the decision could do, but also looking at the long run and see if it deviates from your intended path. Is that correct?
Exactly. As long as the long-term fundamentals of the company stays the same, your vision in general stays the same. You all are working towards the right path. Nobody is intentionally doing anything to harm the company. I think that's okay, and just have fun and enjoy the journey.
I think maybe to add to that, right? I think my sanity check would always be whether or not we are doing things right or are we doing the right thing. And I would have a very big problem if people are not doing the right thing. Like
Right.
I would pick out any co-founder or any C-suite that feels that he or she prioritize doing things right than doing the right thing. If you don't do right by people, how long do we have to live, right? How much money you want to make, right? You know what I mean? You don't like. Sometimes we are too full of ourselves, right? Or we think like this is our whole world. Who cares, please, right? But we have to do right by people, right? I think that is my sanity check, and I think the founders or the C-suite that has followed me always stick by this. We never have ever quarrel, right? Because is this the right thing to do? Okay, right thing to do, right? We pay, right? Is this the right thing to do? Okay, we swap, right? Rather than doing things right. So that has always worked for us.
Right. I think that's the best mindset to have. Like, instead of doing things the right way, are you doing it correctly, and are you upholding basic human morality? Actually, on the topic of morality, I think this is a discussion that some of me and my friends have when you want to do idea validation, and especially not many people may be comfortable approaching friends, family, financial institutions to pitch their idea or validate it. So what are some avenues that new businesses can look towards to validate the idea without without having this fear of their idea being stolen? Yasmin, would you mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. Very interesting, right? Startup idea is really, it's a guess, right? We think we have all these great ideas, right? Pending validation. Now, what is this comprehensive and safer way? Of course, we can share with our immediate loved ones and family, right? And tell them, okay, it's highly confidential. Don't say anything, right? But sometimes people forget, right? And they may mention it in passing. But sharing your idea, the actual solution, may not be the way, right? So how about thinking about going back to the problem, right? And asking the right questions, right? I mean, in consulting, we're always talking about data collection, data analysis, right? So take it like an interview process, right? Think about the service and product that you want to solve, right? This is a new solution that you have, or better solution to an existing problem, right? Talk to the people who are facing the problems, right? And you can go down to the streets, you can find those people, find the right people to ask those right questions, right? Focusing on them, right? Understand the problems first before you even try to tell them about what you think might solve them, right? Go to where the problems or solutions are happening if you can, right? And it's about that analysis, right? And if you are able to get some numbers are your friend, right? Talk to as many people as you can with those questions, right? And test to see if you are close, if you are close to answering their problem. And of course, but now it's a bit difficult because we may have to do it, virtually, because sometimes it's very beneficial if you can talk to them in person, right? To see that even certain things that you are alluding to your idea or the solution, whether it appeals to them, right? And whether they will be interested. Other things you can do, of course, right, is simple desktop research and all that. And if that all fails, right, if you really need to talk to somebody, right, find somebody who is a trusted mentor, right, or even seek and pay a consultant to help you, right, because then they're obligated with NDA and all that to not have the information. There's also situations where you are already an established organization and you have the funds, right? Get a legal representative. So even when you're talking to the government, even when you're talking to an investor, right? Follow up with an email from your legal representative and they know you're serious. Yeah. They know that you cannot be bullied just because you are students or fresh grads or a young startup. That if anything happens, you will take action and you are able to take action.
Right. So I think it's really good how we, instead of presenting your idea to people, you go back to the problem question and start validating if your target market actually does agree with your solution and really finding that target market fit. And I think I want to branch off from beyond idea validation to idea implementation. Albert, this is specifically for you with brands like creating these puzzle courses and gamifying everyday learning experiences. And with that, I think continuous development of new content is to be expected. And with that, a lot of hypothesis testing, validation, implementation, evaluation, if your courses actually do bring in your intended results. So given that, how would you ensure that your product performs to your expectations? And what would be your advice for businesses looking to develop or implement new products in their business model?
Okay, let me try and readjust this question a little bit. So essentially it means, okay, so for us, let's give a little bit of context. So what our company does is we are a creative agency and we specialize in gamification. So the easy way to explain to people what we do is if you find things, let's say you think learning maths it's very boring in school. So they can come and find us and then we turn the maths into a game. We just gamify things. If you think taking a walk in the park, it's very boring. And you come to us and we turn the park into an outdoor escape room. So we just gamify different things. So what you say is correct, in a sense where our what we do is very content driven and we constantly need to innovate and come up with new things. So the key to this is if you put yourself in the bracket of a content creator, you're pretty much similar to any like YouTube channel or any like social media influencer out there. Just creating content is essentially the core of what you're doing. So if we share the same issue, of people like copying what we're trying to do and stuff like that. So the key to doing this is basically just constantly innovate. Yeah, you can't start a business or do something constantly worrying about people trying to copy you, trying to protect what you have already created, and hopefully, it's defensive enough, and barriers to entry. It's going to be very tiring, okay, to constantly be wary about people trying to come from your back. Yeah, so just keep looking forward, constantly innovate. Just have an open mind. Look for inspirations everywhere, and if you're the main source of where all this innovation is constantly coming from, and that's how you differentiate yourself from all the other competitors out there. Yeah, so innovation is key. Don't have to worry about copycats. That's my answer. Shane, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so as a follow-up to your answer, how would you actually measure the impact of your business then? Because most of the time it's quite unobservable because of how arbitrary it is. So how would you measure that impact on people, and if you're really doing it correctly?
There's no right matrix to do it. You can do it in a lot of different ways, whether your clients are constantly coming back. If it's coming back, means whatever you're doing, it's somewhat working and they're satisfied with your work. So that's one way. So simply by monitoring. Second thing, it's just don't be afraid to get feedback from people, especially from strangers. Strangers is always the one that's the most honest to you. They'll just tell you whether you can even do like mystery shopper and stuff. People will tell you whether your idea is good or it just tell you it sucks. Yeah. So yeah, I don't really have a right way to answer that question.
Okay, I mean, that provided a pretty insightful question already in itself because of how diverse it is. But Keith, with TikTok being this data solution company, would you guys have a different take on how you guys would measure the impact on people?
Well, TikTok does have pretty tangible goals, like ways to measure like how many clients we have and how much data goes through our platform every month, and like how much revenue is coming in. So all the tangibles are still there. I think what we're looking towards is the social impact that we make on, let's say, seniors from low income and like persons with disabilities. So it is a learning journey, and like we're trying to like look at all the social impact indicators and how much we're affecting the community with what we're doing with TikTok. And our journey is really just beginning. Previously, we've been focusing so hard on building like a strong core to the business, and now I think it's the right time to explore like all this social impact stuff.
Okay, I think thanks for your answer. That's really good how you guys have both a financial tangible, but also now you've gravitated towards a social tangible where you measure if you're making again, back to what Leon said, if you're doing things right, is it making a meaningful impact on society?
Okay, so can I just very quickly cut in, right? Back to what Yasmin said about, you talked about the ideation stage, right? And talking about ideas to people. Like, my take is that you really need to talk about your startup idea to as many people as you can. Like when I wanted to do loans in Myanmar, I talked to so many people, right? And somebody would say, the Burmese will screw you over. What's the political risk? You check the regulatory system, and you get so much triangulation. It's not funny. When it comes to people stealing your idea, please lah, half the world don't even implement, they don't even execute, right? The people who are founders here, it's 90% execution, right? Who cares what good idea you have if you don't execute? So I never worry about, like, if I had a business idea to tell somebody else, because the person I'm telling, odds are he or she won't execute. Unless I'm talking to like a conglomerate, right? Who can like steal my code and create the same app tomorrow. Then of course I don't share. But it's very, very important to just keep, because as you talk about your idea to other people and you glean all these insights, you are actually also refining your pitch. And it's a very intuitive pitch, right? Okay, I say this, I say that. You can see how people react, and that's the wonderful thing, right? Don't be afraid of your idea being stolen, right? Because your idea will be stolen, but people rarely execute on their idea. Okay, thanks. Yeah.
If you can chime in here too, like, I don't know if you all agree with me, but I think the best person to speak to about your startup idea is other entrepreneurs. So, because they share a passion in the idea, and they're probably too busy working on their own ideas to steal your idea, right? So yeah, I think the key is, if you really want idea validation is to find a community of like fellow entrepreneurs and enthusiasts, such as Scape, for example. Scape like has quite a lot of like following on the Instagram and like Telegram. And I think I've met quite a few good people there. So like, I think they're helping us even now. Like, yeah, ASEAN is a good community. That's what I'm trying to say. And a little bit of a plug there.
Right, I think I have to agree with Leon mentioning how as you pitch to different people, you actually refine your topic. And sometimes, I guess, to get over that mindset that, oh, he might steal my idea is kind of working against you, because like you said, half the time people will just either not care or they might take it but not implement it, right? So I think that brings me to a close for the general questions and the speaker-specific questions. I really thank you so much, Keith, Yasmin, Leon, and Albert, for answering these questions and giving your insights. Val, I will pass the stage back to you to take over.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and all the panelists, and as well as Shane for joining today's session. I hope that you have all found this very insightful. Personally, for me, I felt that this was super, super helpful. Even though I don't have a startup of my own, but you never know what will happen in the future, right? So just take notes of what the speakers and panelists have actually said. Right, so with that, I'll be closing today's session. Thank you so much for attending, everyone. Have a nice evening ahead. Bye-bye.